Hi, hello, welcome. This is Effie is Reading, and I'm Effie. And if you are watching this video, then you are watching my very first video on this channel. This year, I decided that I was going to combine my hobby of reading with my hobby of video editing and see if I could just have some fun making some YouTube videos. So that is where we're at, and I'm so happy to have you. If you're here, welcome in. My intention with this first video was to kind of do a 2024 reading wrapped, and honestly, the footage just kind of got away from me, and it ended up really long, really fast. I thought about maybe breaking it down into a couple different videos and splitting up the topics a little bit, but instead I decided I'd just go full speed ahead right on into it and post the long video. So if you are watching, I encourage you to just throw me on in the background and do some chores or sit on the couch and hang out. Either way, grab a drink, grab a snack, and we'll get right into it. And I will see you on the other side. Cheers. Okay, so I thought for my first video, I would just do a recap of my 2024. I read 41 books last year, which is the most that I have ever read in 1 year. I'm really excited about that. I've been reading since I was in elementary school, and I kind of fell off for a few years there in college and early young adulthood, and I've recently picked it back up as a regular hobby, and I have found some truly incredible books in the last couple of years that I love to share with other people. I love to recommend them, and I love to talk about these books with other people. So BookTube is one of my favorite pieces of the internet with content to consume. So I am excited to share with you my 2024 Wrapped for reading. Okay, so first note, I do have my notes here in front of me. So if I'm like looking down, I'm looking at my notes. So I read 41 books last year, which was a total of 14,721 pages. Of those 41 books, 37 of them were audiobooks, 3 of them were physical books, and just 1 of them was an ebook. I do have a Kindle, and I used my Kindle a ton in 2023, and then this year was obviously the year of the audiobook. The job that I have a lot of office time, and then when I'm not in the office, I am on the road driving. So audiobooks are the prime way for me to consume books. So 37 audiobooks this year, lots of amazing quality. The production on audiobooks just continues to amaze me. Some of them maybe not so much, but for the most part, I love a good audiobook. Just a few physical books. I want to try to read more physical books this year. I do have a shelf behind me with a handful of books on it. Probably about half that I have read before and half that I've not read at all. So I want to try to read some more physical books this year, and I definitely want to utilize my Kindle more this year. I think just kind of looking into the future, I think that I'll have some more time to enjoy physical books in my Kindle. So I had 1 DNF this year. I did not finish 1 book. I had 1 actual 1-star read, and then a couple like iffy 1-star or less reads. So 3 of those total. And then I had 10 5-star reads. I do want to put like a little asterisk there. So I finished a book on January 1st, and I am counting it in my 2024 read count because I finished it at like 9 or 10 a.m. on the 1st, and I had been reading it for pretty much all of December, and I just didn't get around to finishing those last couple hours. So Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin, that one is definitely counted in my 2024 reads. It's a little bit of an oopsie, whatever. Okay. My month with the most books read was January with 8 books that month. I jumped off and I was ready to go. I was off and reading. I will say 3 of the books I read last January were graphic novels. So those went very quickly. I didn't spend more than a couple hours on any of them. But yes, 8 books in the month of January. I did not have any repeat authors. My newest book that I read was The Wood at Midwinter, and that was released on October 22nd of 2024. So very new. I read that one in December. And then the oldest book that I read was The Walking Dead Volume 2, a graphic novel, and that one was released on November 4th of 2004. Okay, so my top genres. I would say that personally, my favorite books are going to be like thrillers. I do like some horror. I love a good sci-fi, especially like space novel. I don't read too many romances. I do love Emily Henry, and she did make my 5-star list this year. I just don't read very many of them. So I am not at all surprised by the genres that made it into my top 3 this year. I do want to expand a little bit coming up this year. I would like to just try some new stuff, and maybe that's a video that I can make. Try a new genre with me. So anyway, without further ado, my top 3 genres. In third spot was sci-fi with 5 books. And in second was fantasy fiction with 10 books, which totally makes sense. I absolutely love fantasy. And my top spot, number 1 genre, was thriller with 11 books. So, some other genres that made my list this year. I did read those comics and graphic novels at the beginning of the year. I read a couple of contemporary kind of coming of age novels. I read horror. That one did make the list, did make the cut. I would really like to get into some more good horror this year. I'm really picky about horror. I don't want it to be like super gory, but I do want to be spooked. So if you got any good horror recommendations, let me know. I've got my mysteries. I've got a couple romance books that did make the list this year. I've got my sci-fi. I've got my thriller. And then I did have one YA dystopian book that made the list this year. That was a recommendation from a friend. It was The Gracier. Very good book. I enjoyed that one quite a bit. I love a good dystopian novel. I love a good YA dystopian book. I would really like to reread like The Hunger Games this year, and maybe get into some other YA dystopian books. So, okay, so I think that I'm gonna do my least favorites first, and then talk about my favorites at the end. That way, we end on a high note. So I'm gonna go kind of reverse order, ending with my absolute least favorite book of the whole year, and yeah. So in third place, we had Please Tell Me by Mike Omer, released in 2023. This book follows a psychologist who is working with a child who was recently kidnapped and returned home. And the child doesn't speak at all. And the psychologist is working on getting her to talk again. And Kathy, the little girl, is expressing her trauma through play, and some of it is quite concerning. And it's just like unraveling that mystery and figuring out what happened to Kathy. This book. I wanted to like this book. I liked the premise. I thought that like the plot was fun. The writing sucked. I'm sorry, Mike. The writing was not great. I didn't enjoy that. I had bigger issue with a couple of the characters, and like, okay, so the main character, Robin, she has this insta love with the detective on the case, and they just immediately fall in love, immediately get into a romance, and it seems so wildly inappropriate for the topic of this story. And then towards the end of the book, Robin has been attacked. I can't quite recall, but Robin has been attacked or something. She spent some time in the hospital. She gets out of the hospital, and she's immediately down to bone her new boyfriend. Girlfriend, like, you were just attacked and assaulted, and you're like, actually, what if I get all gussied up and he wants to screw me right now, maybe on the couch? I don't know. Like, what are you talking about? So that was a huge, massive turnoff for me. And then the other character, Kathy's father, was insufferable. Your daughter, your like 4 or 5-year-old daughter, was kidnapped, gone for I think about a year, returned, and she's not speaking anymore because she's traumatized. And he's such a dick. Like, he expects Kathy to bounce back and be the perfect little girl that she was before within moments of her returning, and has no understanding or willing to understand the trauma that his child daughter has gone through. He like turns on Robin and makes her out to be this villain because she hasn't fixed his daughter in 2 sessions. And maybe you and your wife should go to therapy too, because you guys have been through something horrible and traumatic. And he gives that like a single shot and goes, yep, never mind, fuck it, I don't want to do it anymore. Like, the worst. He's a terrible man. Terrible man. So yeah, Mike Omer. I gave that one a 2 star. I did not enjoy that book. Sorry. Number 2 on my least favorites list this year was Brother by Ania Alborn, and that was released in 2015. So basically, the premise of this book is that Michael Morrow and his family, his mom, I believe stepdad, brother, and sister, they all kill people. They are all serial killers. They kill people in their backyard. And Michael has like a turn of conscience. And now he feels bad about that. And he doesn't want to participate in that anymore. Which, like, okay, fine, great. It's because he meets a cute girl in town and he would like to be in a relationship with her, but he realizes that the way that his family is and the way that he is doesn't lend much to having a proper relationship. So Michael is going through deconstruction, basically, like, oh my God, I'm a terrible person and I don't want to be a terrible person anymore. My issues with the book, number one, there were some incestuous themes between his younger sister and himself, and those just fully icked me out. I, yep, that's really all there is to say about that. Not a fan. My second sticking point, okay, the family murders people, right? So like you would expect there to be violence in the book. The violence was so overwhelming. It like, especially the familial violence. There was so much abuse, family member to family member. It was so overwhelming and thick and heavy, and like I got to a point where I was just desensitized to it. I was reading it, and I like, when I first started the book, I was sick to my stomach, just the beatings and the verbal abuse and all of that. And then I don't know, 25% of the way in, I was just like, yeah, well, okay, Michael's getting beat again, whatever. And I don't love that. Hi, Kit. Hi, Kit Kat. Kit Kat's gonna hang out with us. So yeah, so the abuse was just, it was a lot. And maybe I should have understood that a bit more going into the book, but I really didn't. I ended up reading spoilers for the book just to know where the hell it was going. I did finish the book, but I looked up spoilers at around the halfway mark just so I knew what the hell was going to go on. Because I really couldn't take this like just sick to my stomach gut feeling anymore. Besides that, I I didn't feel bad for Michael at all. Like, there is a twist at the end of the book, and I think that you're supposed to maybe feel for him a little bit, and I just did not. Like, you killed people, bud, and you're kind of gross. Like, I don't know, maybe I'm a terrible person because I could not see from his point. I don't know. I think that's why it's not my most hated book this year, because I could see where, I could see where he was coming from. I could see the terrible circumstances he had been in. But also just none of these characters were redeeming in any way whatsoever. Also, I read or listened to a book earlier in the year called The Lighthouse Witches, and the same narrator for that book narrated Brother. And as I'm listening to it, I'm going, this voice sounds oddly familiar. Who is this? And I looked it up, and it really threw me for a loop to be listening to that same author same like voice actor narrate a completely different story. Anyway, so I rated it 2 stars. I would not recommend it to anybody, probably. Like, I don't know, maybe if you enjoy gory horror, it would be a good book for you. I would say it just pushed too many of my buttons. I don't know, in a bad way. What the writing wasn't bad, and I think that's why I ended up giving it 2 stars and why it's not bottom of my list. Like, it wasn't horrible that way. The content was just really rough. So that was Brother. My number 1 least favorite book of the year was Pearl by Josh Malerman, released in 2019. And this book, there was a lot about this book that I did not enjoy. I DNF'd this book at about 60%. I just could not do it anymore. I really do think that it came down to the writing and the way the story was executed. I listened to it, and I really just could not get into the narrator. She had a way of speaking where I can't recall now, but I do believe it was like everything kind of ended like this. And then this other thing happened. And then it was another. And then this other thing happened. And it was so monotonous. And there was there was nothing that I could like latch onto while listening. In addition to that, I thought the writing was really poor. I did not feel like the execution of the story was good at all. There were a few characters that were just not enjoyable. It switched between POVs throughout the story. And there were a few that I just could not care about. And they're like dying, and I don't care. Basically the story is about a psychic killer pig, and the story follows the day that the pig finally gets to have his dessert and kill everybody he wants to kill. And like, I think the premise of a psychic killer pig is fucking dope. I think that could have been really cool and fun. It felt really hokey, and there were like the mother character. There were a couple young boys, and she was their mother. She was the daughter of the man who owned the farm with the pig, so she grew up with Pearl. She was like maybe not concerned enough about this creepy ass pig, um, and I don't know. There was a cop character who like was just, he thought he was total hot shit because he was finally responding to an emergency call, and he was going to be the one that fucking took everyone and saved the day and all that. And okay, gross. I don't care. And then I'm pretty sure he was immediately lusting after one of the teenage girls that was on the farm and had called in the emergency. It's just a weird book, and I couldn't get behind it. So not scary, not unsettling, not a horror book to me. It was plenty gory, but it didn't instill any fear. It didn't elicit any feelings of anxiety or anything other than like, ew. Okay. So that was Pearl by Josh Malerman. Really fucking surprised that that's the same guy that wrote Bird Box, because I loved Bird Box. That was a great movie. As far as I know, the adaptation from the book was spot on. So, Josh, what are you doing, buddy? Like, I don't think Pearl was it. So, with that, those were my 3 least favorite books of this year. Yeah, I read lots of good books this year, lots of good stuff. But those made my least favorites list. Okay, so favorites. I have 3 top favorites and I have 1 honorable mention. So I think I'll start with the honorable mention, and then same way we'll kind of work our way from the bottom up. My honorable mention this year was one of the graphic novels I read. It's called On a Sunbeam, and it's by Tilly Walden. It was the very first book I read in 2024. I was given a copy to borrow from my friend Christine, and it's incredible. It's so good. The art is gorgeous. The use of color was amazing. I loved the story. It was heartwarming. It was queer. It was kind of coming of age. It was a really lovely story. So basically, you're following a young woman named Mia, and we're kind of between split perspectives. One from about 5 or 6 years earlier when she was in high school and she was attending an all-girls school, and just kind of the process of her trying to fit in at that school and then meeting a girl and falling in love and having her first girlfriend. And then that girl has to leave abruptly and their relationship kind of hangs in the balance because they didn't get a proper goodbye. And then the present is Mia, and she is working for a company that does like restoration on buildings that are set to be demolished and recycled. Everything is set in space, so there's like floating rocks and hanging crags and spaceships, and it's such a beautiful, wonderful setting. Tilly Walden does an amazing job at color composition. She doesn't use a lot of colors in her art, but the contrast is just incredible. I really loved On a Sunbeam. If you have the opportunity to read this book, especially if you have the opportunity to get a physical copy in your hands, I would highly, highly, highly recommend this book. Okay, so for my top 3 books of the year, I'll just start at the bottom and work my way up like I did before. My number 3 this year, Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Sue Lynn Tan. And this book was published in 2022. I love this book. It was incredible. It was beautiful. It was gorgeous. I listened to it. The narrator was incredible. I am so happy that I found this book. I think it was maybe from TikTok. I don't really recall at this point, but I am so happy that I listened to this book. I do feel like it was kind of out of my norm, out of my regular horror, thriller, mystery genres. And I'm so happy with this book. So just kind of a quick little recap that I wrote up here. So Xingyin is the daughter of the moon goddess Chang'e, who has been imprisoned to live on the moon forever after drinking a potion of immortality that did not belong to her. The celestial emperor does not know that Xingyin exists at all. So the story begins when Xingyin must go into hiding. The book follows her adventures, Odyssey style, through the realm as she attempts to learn more about her immortal magic and how to free her mother. So Xingyin leaves the moon and she must venture out on her own and keep her identity concealed so that she does not put her mother in danger, but she also has to learn about her own immortal magic and through that learn how to free her mother from her imprisonment on the moon. And this story is just beautiful. It's the attention to detail from Sue Lynn Tan is incredible. She writes so beautifully. When I'm listening, I feel like every part of the story I can see in my mind. Her prose is gorgeous, and she does not leave any stone unturned. There's no rush to this story, which I really love. I enjoy a book that has like a quick clip, but while this book moves through each step of the way and does not miss a beat, it does continue to move forward. There were no points where I was like, okay, let's go. Let's move on. Come on. It all fell exactly when it needed to. And I really loved the storytelling, like the way, like I said, it was kind of Odyssey style. She found a home amongst the Celestial Emperor. She lived at his castle and she befriended his son and then fell in love with his son. And then she joined the Celestial Army. And so then there were a few chapters about some monsters that she had to fight as part of the Celestial Army. And then she was off visiting other castles and other kingdoms within the realm. And it all flowed so wonderfully from one event to the next. I absolutely love this book. I would highly recommend it to anybody who really enjoys fantasy and wants something kind of outside of the current cultural norm for fantasy. This book was so great. I cannot talk about it highly enough. It was one of 2, so I am currently reading the second book. I am about 30 or 40% through, and it is just as good as the first one was. And I feel like it picked up right where the second one left off and jumped right into the action yet again. And I'm really excited to see where this second book goes. So that was Daughter of the Moon Goddess. Absolutely 10 out of 10. Amazing book. Okay, so my number 2 this year is the book that I mentioned earlier that I technically finished on January 1st of this year, but I'm counting it for last year's reads because I was so close to being all the way through it and I had intended to read it last year. So it's a mulligan, it's an oopsie, it's fine. It's Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. And this book was published in 2022 as well. I am still writing the emotional wave of this book. I absolutely loved this story. I loved these characters. I loved the plot and the setting. Just everything about this book. And it didn't even end like with happy, nice, wonderful. Like it left me feeling really sad and melancholy. But honestly, it really that the same similar feeling I had when I read Our Wives Under the Sea. I that book left me with just kind of this heaviness, this sadness, but still felt profound. So Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow follows the story of Sadie Green and Sam Mazer, who were childhood friends who reconnected in college, and they make a video game together. And then they go on to make many video games together and they form a company called Unfair Games. And the two of them, along with their friend Marks, it just kind of follows their story and how their lives intertwine together and the highs and lows of working relationships and friendships and romantic relationships. This book was such a gut punch. I feel like there were several big events that left me just feeling broken and sad. And like one of the biggest things for me in this book, I loved the characters and they also drove me crazy, and that's what made them feel so real to me. There were multiple times in the book where Sadie, I was fully on her side, and then there were other times where I was like, girl, what the hell are you doing? What, stop. And same with Sam and same with Marks. I just, again, I cannot say enough good things about this book. I will be thinking about this book for a really long time. If you want a book that kind of makes you feel a little sad, but is still very good, absolutely. 100% Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. I'm going to recommend it to everyone forever. It was an incredible read. I'm really glad that I rounded out the year with it. The end of my 2024 had some personal stuff going on, and I'm really glad that I didn't end with like a really bright and cheery, happy romance, cheesy, smushy. No, I needed something a little bit heavier, a little deeper, and this was exactly what I needed to end 2024 on. Absolutely 100%. Please read this book, please. Okay, so my number 1 favorite book from 2024, here we go, is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, and this book was published in 2021. I listened to this audiobook. If you read this book, you have to listen to the audiobook. There are parts of this book that require audio production. And if you read it on paper, I'm sure you had a great experience. You have to listen to this book. If you've already read it on paper, I encourage you to listen to it again. The so we follow a character named Ryland Grace, and he wakes up on a spaceship and he has severe amnesia. He cannot remember why he's there, what he's doing there. And as the story progresses, he remembers that he is there to help save humanity, basically, because, why else? What else happens in space books like this? But he is there to help try to save humanity. And the story follows him and his adventures and discoveries while on this mission to save Earth. And I really like I've read The Martian. The Martian was really great. I read that several years ago now. Andy Weir has a really great way of being technical and humorous at the same time. Ryland Grace, the character, he goes through like these mental calculations over and over and over again. And even though they're outside of my comprehension, I still felt like I was able to follow along. And Ryland's sense of humor, along with Rocky's sense of humor, oh my God, I don't want to give any spoilers because I want you to be able to go read this book and experience this book the way that I did, which was pretty much reading the synopsis and then going in blind, right? I love Rocky and Grace so much. I love their relationship, their friendship, their camaraderie, their communication. Everything about Rocky and Grace were amazing, perfect, no notes, chef's kiss, mwah, loved it. I love a good space book. I love a good sci-fi. I love a little bit of, apocalypse, impending doom, that kind of shit. This book had it all. This book had everything. It was so good. I know that I've said that phrase about a million times in the last couple minutes, but seriously, Project Hail Mary was everything I wanted it to be. I'm so glad I had the ebook checked out, and I decided to wait for the audiobook. It took like another 2 months to get the audiobook, and I'm so glad I waited. I will have particular parts of the audiobook ingrained in my brain forever. I'm honestly sitting here thinking right now, maybe I should go listen to it again because it was just that good. It was just that good. Okay. That's it. I'll stop talking about Project Hail Mary. I'll stop talking about all my favorites. I feel like I'm not super great at articulating all of the little particular things that I like about these books, but you could not go wrong. Could not possibly go wrong with Project Hail Mary, Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, Daughter of the Moon Goddess, or On a Sunbeam. Every single one of those should hopefully blow your mind. Okay, so I wanted to just kind of end here with a handful of recommendations, other recommendations. I talked about my least favorites. I talked about my most. I had just like 3 or 4 or 5 more that I rated in like the 4-star range that I really loved, and I want to make sure that other people are reading them too. So just kind of rapid fire, I'm going to show these and talk about them real quick. If you have the chance, if they sound like they're interesting to you, I really encourage you to check these ones out as well. Okay, so first was Girl in Ice by Erica Fenerick. Forensic? Shit, I don't know. It's on screen right now. You can look at it. Girl in Ice. I found this one kind of randomly on Libby. I think it was just available, so I checked it out and I listened to it. I really enjoyed the story. Little girl is found trapped in ice from a research team up in Antarctica, and they thaw her out and she's alive. And it's figuring out who she is and what she's doing there and what her story means to us as a people. And it's a murder mystery, and it's a thriller, and it's a little bit horror, and it's sci-fi, and it's perfect for a good winter read. I think I read it in like February. It was a really good, made me feel cold, made me feel chilly. Mwah, perfect. Please read it in winter. It was great. My next one is Salt Slow by Julia Armfield. She also wrote Our Wives Under the Sea. Honestly, read both of these books. Salt Slow was her first debut novel, and it's a series of short stories. They are kind of like sci-fi horror. The way that Julia writes is so visceral. I remember a passage out of Our Wives Under the Sea where a character's skin is sloughing off, and that imagery lives with me. She has a really incredible way with words. I absolutely highly recommend. She's become one of my favorite authors in the last 24 months. I really love the way she writes. I love the stories she tells. They're not happy, wonderful, sweet. They're deep and they're heavy and they're queer, which I freaking love, man. I need more of it. So anything by Julia Armfield. Salt Slow was a collection of short stories, and Our Wives Under the Sea was one full novel. Definitely check both of those out. Next up are a handful. I've got 4 more here, and they're all kind of in the popular culture, have been recommended, I'm sure, plenty, but I'm here to tell you that they were all great and you should definitely read them. So Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross, Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies by Heather Fawcett, The Unmaking of June Farrow by Adrienne Young, and finally Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt. they were all great. They're all very good. Divine Rivals and Emily Wilde's, I believe, are both parts of series, like first installments in series. I have not read the second parts, but they are on my TBR for this year to check out. Divine Rivals was a little bit steampunkish, a little bit like kind of vintage vibes, throwback vibes, war. I really, really liked the premise of that story. I liked being in the perspective of a journalist, of a writer. That was really neat, something I don't feel like I had seen much before. Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies was fun. It was funny. I really loved Emily and Wendell's relationship and the humor that they both shared. That's a good book to read in the winter if you like to read wintertime books when it's cold around you. It was a good kind of immersive book. The Unmaking of June Farrow, Adrienne Young, her writing style is really fun. I did not see the twist coming in that particular book, and it had me reading just nonstop. I listened to it, but I couldn't stop. I couldn't put it down. I listened to it beginning to end very quickly. The plot of that book is really fun, and I love a little bit of like time hopping, time skippage. That's always a fun little treat. And then Remarkably Bright Creatures. I'd seen that on the shelf at the library at the bookstore for quite a while, and I'm really glad that I finally read it. It's very sweet, very heartwarming, sad, emotional, but I feel like it ends on an upswing. I heard someone talking about how a couple of the characters were kind of annoying or insufferable, and I don't agree with that. I think that there is one particular character who needs to grow up, and I think that their growth is shown through the course of the book, and their immaturity is part of the book and part of the way that they grow through their own story. So Remarkably Bright Creatures are really fun. I also really love a book that features animals and features an intelligent animal, and I especially love an octopus. So very fun, cute little story. Ended on a nice little upswing, I think. Okay, so that was my little recap. I hope you enjoyed it. I had my kind of reading stats and my favorites and my least favorites and a handful of extra recommendations. If you have read any of the books that I talked about today, please let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I want to talk to people about them, especially my like least favorites. I love to talk about a favorite with somebody and just gush over it. But if you liked Pearl, if you liked, oh my God, Brother, if you liked, please tell me, please talk to me down in the comments. I want to hear your thoughts on those books. I would love to hear kind of some differing opinions on those particular stories. I'm so excited to be here. I'm excited to talk about these books. I gotta say, I was a little nervous when I started, but I'm really hyped to talk about some of my favorite reads this year and get a little bit better at some video editing. I know that my glasses were probably reflecting the light really bad earlier, so apologies for that. I will work on figuring out how to do that better. But yeah, if you made it through this video, you're really stinking cool, and I love you, and thank you for hanging out with me. Thanks for looking at my cat while he was in here. He misses you and he loves you, and I will see you guys in the next one. Have a good day. Bye. Would you like out? Would you like back out? I can let you out. Hi. You have to say bye to the camera though. Say bye, Kit. No.